everybody. This is Brian Kelly, CEO of the amazing Prison Entrepreneurship Program, here for another edition of PEPTalks. You know, at a time when our country is ill in some cases and stressed in others that they may become ill, and the coronavirus is making somewhat of a comeback, and also there is a big racial division, injustice division going on in our country. News is saturated with negative stories. Aren't we desperate for a positive story, something inspirational, something to really hang our hat on? Well, I'm bringing one to you today because PEP has got so many great stories, and I'm going to introduce to you and interview today an esteemed member of the Estes unit, Redeem 19. Would you introduce yourself for us today?
Yes, sir. My name is Jonathan Dantzler, a.k.a. Mr. Pringles, because once I pop, the fun don't stop.
Mr. Pringles. Well, okay, so some of you may not know that PEP gives a sweet name to all of our guys that go through the program to kind of de-gangstify everybody and teach them it's okay to laugh at yourself, not take yourself so seriously, and rebuild the new man. But it also makes our volunteers, at ease. And so tell me a little bit, how did you get that name and who gave it to you?
Well, the name was given to me by my old bunkie at the Estes unit. We bunked for a little over a year there during my time there. And he noticed that I loved to eat chips. He noticed that I could sit there and I could devour 2 or 3 bags of chips a day. And so when I came into class one day when they were passing out the names, they hit me with the Pringles. And, I love Pringles. Love that name.
I like Pringles too. That's a great name. I love that. Jonathan, tell us a little bit about you. Like, how long have you been out of prison?
I've been out of prison for 16 months.
16 months. Awesome. And how long were you in? And if you don't mind, what were you in for?
Yes, sir. I was in for 4 years on a 5-year sentence. My crime was aggravated robbery. That happened in 2015.
Do you mind diving down a little bit into that? Just kind of sharing a little bit about it? And how do you get to that point?
Right. It was basically a situation where I loaned a coworker, a former coworker, some money, and shortly after that, he ended up leaving our place of employment. I lost contact with him. He wasn't returning my calls. It was almost like he fell off the face of earth. So immediately you start feeling like you've been hustled or swindled, and so I made several attempts to reach out to him and get a hold of him. One night I was able to go by his house, and he answered the door. And as soon as he answered the door, things became heated. We got to a verbal argument that escalated to a physical argument pretty quickly. I had a weapon on me at the time. I was a concealed handgun license holder, and so I unholstered my weapon. I pointed it at him, and I demanded some belongings that I kind of repossessed as a form of payment and stormed off. I was arrested later that night, charged with 2 counts of aggravated robbery.
Just to be clear, that never discharged your weapon or anything like that, just used it as leverage?
Yes, sir. Just pointed it at him, basically.
That's the aggravated robbery. Okay, well, that seems so far removed from the man that I know today. And so can you give us a glimpse of what did it look like to be Jonathan Dantzler before prison?
Right. I was a person that was power hungry. I was one that was thirsting for authority, thirsting for, to move up corporate ladders and advance my career. And I was one that was without joy. I was a person that was miserable. I was one that was just, I grew up in a impoverished neighborhood. And so my whole set agenda for my 20s and early teens was to make sure I didn't return to that state. And I was willing to do anything and take advantage of anybody to keep from being poor or impoverished.
You actually used a term about yourself when we were talking prior to this. You referred to yourself prior to prison as being mean, and I so don't see that. So I guess that kind of what you're talking about. I just don't even recognize that guy, which is a great testament
Yes, sir.
to you. What did you do before prison? What kind of job or vocation did you do?
Mm-hmm. I started in retail and quickly moved to security, where I became one of the supervisors that was overseeing different locations like the Dallas Convention Center, the Dallas Public Library, Union Station. And then after working security, I moved into manufacturing, where I was a warehouse manager for Android Industries.
Okay, so it sounds like you had some skills, had some drive, certainly,
yes,
and trying to come up. Let's talk about your prison experience for a little bit. So, you get convicted of your crime, you go through county jail, and then down into prison. You ended up in Sanchez unit, I think, El Paso, right?
El Paso.
What was your prison experience? Because this was your first time down.
Right.
What was that environment like?
When you first become the prison here, you understand that the state or the county that you're in has certain rules and conduct that you're supposed to abide by. But inside the prison, you have the rules that are among the prisoners and the way they live and the way they kind of coexist in a lot of time, close, confined quarters.
It's the culture, isn't it?
And it's a culture thing. It's a mindset, and that mindset is based on segregation and, hanging out with your own people and eating at certain tables, being able to watch TV at certain times or at certain locations, and making sure it was just a very segregated environment, one that I, had never witnessed, growing up in. So it was a culture shock for sure when you get to prison and you see, the way racism is on a completely intensified level.
From my time in prison, as you guys know, I've done a little bit of time myself, and the division, the disunity, the antagonism in prison between inmates and guards. Mm-hmm. So we're conditioned to see them as the enemy, the antagonist, but also other races. And you sit with your own race, and the division is just probably what we're witnessing out here on steroids. Is that a fair statement?
I would agree with it. Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. So tell us about your introduction to PEP. How did you learn about us, or how did that go?
Mm-hmm. So I was in El Paso at the Julio Sanchez unit, and there was several people inside the dorm that I was in applied for PEP. It was around 15 people that applied, and 4 guys got letters back saying that they were denied. So you're encouraging, you start to wing a little bit, like, oh, am I going to get into this? And the word around the campfire was, you get into this program, your chances of going home and making parole, go through the roof. I mean, it jumps. This is a program that talks heavily about the recidivism rate that they held. That was at the time was 7%. And so as a guy, you want to go home. Anybody that's in prison, their main objective is figuring out a way to go home. And so I wanted to try to join this program because I seen it as my best chance to make parole. So I eventually got a letter back from PEP, kind of explaining to me more about the program. And I was, accepted to the program, and that's kind of how I got introduced to PEP.
All right. So from El Paso, you got transferred halfway across the state to the Estes unit just south of Dallas. And what was that, experience like? The reintroduction to a new unit to a PEP culture, was it any different?
The unit was completely different here. One, you go from, like Brian said, one where there is stark segregation and just stark division throughout the prison here. And like you said, between inmates and guards and inmate themselves. And once you enter into the Estes unit, you just see a complete, change in the vibe and the atmosphere of that facility is completely different. And then once you get introduced to some of the PEP participants there, you just see a completely different mindset and a different way of conducting yourselves, when you're inside those walls. And it was a lot more of a fraternity. It was a lot more brotherhood and love and helping one another and being able there to support one another.
That's been my example as well. So in most prisons, the disunity is worse than we've ever experienced it out here, but the unity in PEP, in that environment, couched in that environment, nested in that environment, is vastly different, and the brotherhood is amazing. So what about a welcome to PEP moment? Was there a time when you went, wow, this is really different? A Bible study or coming in the room or anything like that?
So it was during the class prior to Redeem was transitioning from phase 1 into phase 2. And so they were holding Bible studies inside the PEP room during this time. And I was able to attend one of the Bible studies that was hosted by Dr. Barris. And just as soon as you go into the room and you look around and you see all the wars and the pictures and, you see, the different color. I mean, so you go from where, all the walls are white, and you go into PEP, there's not a white wall in there. There's orange, there's blue, and I was like, wow, it's bright in here, it's colorful. The vibe is just different. So, and immediately when I was getting in there, no one knew that I was a part of PEP, but the guys that were in there just came up to me one after one, and they introduced themselves, and they were asking, hey, are you in PEP? Are you trying to get in PEP? And they gave me a lot of pointers, a lot of insight about the program, and gave me some great tips on how to, avoid some of that homework and, take care of your business and how to really take advantage of the different classes they had, from authentic manhood to, just all the way from the speech classes that they have through Toastmasters. And so you just get a wide range of different things, and you can just feel just from that experience, one, the love and the guy's heart that was in the program, and their willingness to help you and be there and support you through your journey.
One of the differentiators we have to go along with that brotherly love amongst our peers is our volunteers who come in and make a tremendous difference in our lives. So were there any volunteers who really stood out to you that have impacted you greatly and, changed the course of your life?
Colleen Coyle, and her Rickenbacker. I'm sorry, Rickenbacker. Her and her ethics class, and the way she really teaches you on how to present yourself in public and how to eat correctly and how to stand up straight and make sure that you're dressing appropriately and your shoes match your belt and all that stuff. And then there was guys. Jason, I'm trying to think of his name.
Somebody we talked about was John Seltzer, right?
John Seltzer, yes. John Seltzer, oh man, the love that this guy has for the participants in the program. And when, he comes up and I remember he gave me some great tips and insight when I was doing my BP pitch, and just the encouragement that he gave me and the way he just comes and converses with you and just checks in on you from event after event. And he's one of the familiar faces up there. So, God, when you're going through the program and you're, putting all your effort into kind of making sure your pitch is correct and you're able to deliver it well, to be able to get that positive feedback on what you can improve and what you did right was very encouraging.
And he's so awesome. If John Seltzer doesn't light your fire, your wood's wet. But and you mentioned Scott Schlegel, Impact, and there's so many. The list goes on and on. But going back to Colleen and her etiquette class, she makes such an imprint on all of us. And so I have got to ask you right now, do your shoes match your belt?
They do. Black shoes, black belt.
All right. I was just checking because she would want to know that if they didn't, she would show up. She would
move right here. Right.
So a highlight of PEP. What was a highlight for you in the whole experience?
A lot of people is going to point to the graduation, and the graduation is phenomenal. but it's really event after event. And the guys in Redeem 19 were amazing. I mean, you know, the way we bonded. And when you're living in close quarters with someone, when you see someone on a daily basis, almost 24 hours a day, and the group of guys that were in that class really, you know, inspired me to become better and better, because they really looked out for you and poured into you, and you know, the bond that we were able to build. But going back to the graduation, that is, you know, that's the pinnacle of the program. To be able to walk across that stage as one from a person that did not graduate from high school, you know, to have my parents there, to have my brothers there, and to see me walk across that stage and receive that diploma. You know, I was honored by the guys in PEP to be voted Mr. Love. That's one of the 10 drive values, and they passed those out to you know, participants that distinguish themselves in different characteristics that match our values. Was an honor, and you know, it was a proud moment for my family and for me as well.
So that was the first time you ever wore a cap and gown?
Yes, sir. Very first time I ever wore. The caps and gowns were really decked out. You know, we looked pretty good. You know, looking back on those pictures, you know,
very handsome.
Yes, you know. Great.
So was that the moment when you realized you're not the same man as before, or did that come at some other time?
I would have to say, you know, just the visits I got throughout the program, and you know, my parents are coming up there and they were just seeing a different me. Wow. And you know, they were getting a lot of feedback from PEP, and I was writing a lot of letters saying, you know, this is the things that we're working on, and this is how, you know, we're seeing how to become, you know, entrepreneurs. We're seeing how to become better employees and better fathers and better sons and better, you know, better contributors to society as a whole. And to see, you know, the look in their faces and the conversations that we had throughout that program really is when you can really see, because, you know, your family started asking you more questions. They started, you know, investigating about the program, and you're able to just see that they can see a change in you. And when they see a change in you, you know you're really making some headway in
I want to put a bookmark there, but first I want to talk about release. So you make parole and you come out, and tell us about that release process. What was that like for you? Release
is an experience that just brings back so much emotions, and I mean, it's like when you're getting out and you're walking through that gate, and that first step as you cross that line, the air changes. Everything, you know, you almost become, you know, dizzy, and I mean, it was just such a magnificent feeling when you regain freedom.
It's also kind of intimidating, though, too.
It is.
And
because,
overwhelming?
You know, you go from being in a place that, you know, is structured, that has accountability in that, to a degree that is necessary to maintain control and to keep you, you know, within regulation. So once you get out, you understand here that you don't have the support from the state anymore. You know, you don't have those 3 meals coming every day. You don't have that roof over your head, you know. So you immediately realize, you know, hey, you know, I got bills now. I got to figure out where my next meal is coming from. I got to figure out where I'm going to stay. And PEP was there for me throughout. You know, my life caddy, Jeremy, he was there to pick me up at the gate. You know, he took me to get my first meal at Lakewood Smokehouse. That Elvis burger. Oh, boy, that Elvis burger. And, you know, they were, you know, and you were able to go to the transitional house to give you a starter kit and a and a big buffle bag that is just full of all the things you need, from toothbrushes, the towels, the soap, you know. So they really help you get your feet on the ground here.
So, you know, some of the typical obstacles for people coming out of prison are in documentation, employment, transportation, housing, community around you. Will you talk about those pillars and what that was like for you?
Yes, sir. And if you don't mind, let me quickly shout out to the Dallas transitional team. I mean, Jason Moore and the staff that he has, Timothy, he's moved on, but you have Jeremy and Bobby and those guys. They really help make sure that you're able to get those documentation so you can get to work, so you can make sure that you're, making your parole appointments and everything that you have to do on time. So they make sure that, when you get out, they try to make it as smooth as a transition as possible. And they do a great job of really getting you where you need to go and helping you obtain the documents and the things you need to really get your life back on the right path.
It should be noted that our case management team that we call life caddies, because they'll walk along with you and tell you the lay of the land,
yes, sir.
That the shot is all yours. They're all graduates of the program, so they speak from experience with credibility. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to, employment, housing, transportation. What did those things look like for you? Because they trip up so many people coming out of prison.
Mm-hmm. The housing, I was able to go to the Columbia House. That's a transitional house for PEP in East Dallas. I was able to go immediately into a place where I knew, I was going to be able to have a place to stay and have food. And, they give you bus passes. They give you rides to, wherever you need to go, to your first job appointment, to your first parole meeting. They really make sure that you have everything you need to, like you said, they give you the guidance. You got to make the decision yourself, and you got to have the drive to go out and execute the game plan that you've worked through over those those previous 6 months or plus through the program that you were in. You're armed with the tools, but you have to make sure that you go out and you execute as best you can, and you follow your game plan, and you rely on some of the things that they've taught you. So I had family in the area, but I knew that I wanted to maintain an extra level of accountability, so I chose to go to the transitional house here in Dallas. The guys that are inside the transitional house there, it's just like when you're on the inside. They're here to support you. They're here to help you. They're here to recommend job leads, to recommend whatever you need, and to kind of help you, give you some insight of, hey, this is what I experienced when I got out, so you got to make sure you get this done and take care of that, and so you can avoid some of those trips up that will prevent you from not being able to get a job and things like that.
So your first job, where did you get a job at?
I got a job at Western Extrusions. It's an aluminum company in Carrollton. So they were able to put me right to work, and I was able to work, for a great second chance employer that I was able, to make sure, you got all the hours you can pretty much handle. They're one of those employers that, they give overtime generously. So it was able to really give me a great foundation job and a great starter job to know when I get out that, I had income coming in right away.
Well, I know you're a super humble guy, so you probably never brag on yourself, but I'll do that for you. It's my take that they really liked you and the job that you did, and so you were able to pave the way for quite a few PEP brothers to come behind you and work there. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I was able to, help get employment opportunities for several of the guys that was in the transitional house, both at O'Brien and Columbia. During my time there, which was a little over a year, I was able to get, I believe, 8 of PEP brothers on at Western Extrusions.
But you also did some schooling since you've been out here. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. I was able to go through a HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning course through TRACOM. It's a 360-hour course that's, pretty intensive for 8 weeks. You go full-time from 7 to 3. And they really give you the tools so you can go out and make a living in this trade and heating. And as we know, as it starts to get hot, there's plenty of opportunities where they need experienced and young and eager HVAC technicians to kind of go out there and meet some of the demand that the weather puts in this area.
But you also shared with me, even though you went through that, you got a job because of it, and you were doing great. COVID-19 hit, and you got furloughed because of that. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The company I went to was, just took on too many people in that time to kind of ramp up for the season. But, as we ramped up, as Brian alluded to, the COVID-19 hit. And so they were forced to furlough some of us. But, going through TradeCom, I know I still have the skills that are necessary to get, future opportunities.
So since then, I think you just kind of transformed your hustle, right? What have you been doing since your furlough to make ends meet and keep moving forward?
Mm-hmm. I was able to get a job with a Dallas Morning News contractor delivering newspaper at night. So, you have to be willing to say yes, and you have to be willing to be flexible and to adapt here. And one of the things that I definitely learned going through the PEP program is to never quit. Options are going to come and challenges are going to arise. And that old saying in PEP, your cheese is going to get moved. That means situations are going to happen, and you have to be able to adjust to that. And so, I'm grateful for this opportunity because it continues to allow me to provide for my family.
So let me say this about you. I mean, you're well-spoken. You're clearly a smart guy. You think well on your feet. You've got HVAC training. What's your career track? Because I suspect that we're going to have some listeners who might be interested in helping you out. If you had your dream scenario, what's your path forward and that somebody might be able to help you with?
Yes, sir. I have always heard that I was good with people and I was able to, relate well with others. So my dream, eventually as my career progresses is to get into sales and maybe HVA sales and just do something where I'm able to provide a good quality product to a customer and be able to help them and find something that's able to meet their budget and eventually move into the sales sector is what I'm looking for.
One last question for me, and then I'm going to ask Brandon and see if we've had any questions come in from our chat function. What was there a moment with your family post-release, that was special and moving, and they get to see the transformation in you, and that really just kind of comes home to roost?
Mm-hmm. As I talked about earlier, I was fortunate enough to get several visits while incarcerated. My family lived, just south in Dallas, and where I was fortunate enough to be in the Venus area, like I said, not too far from Dallas. And during that time, you're able to write letters home, and you're able to, talk about some of the church programs and some of the things you're taking advantage of while you're inside. So once you get out, you're able to not only, talk to them, you're able to walk the walk that you've laid forth. They're able to see the different characters development that you got into. They're able to see how my relationship with Christ has blossomed and strengthened through my years of incarcerated and through my time getting out. So, the biggest thing that I seen was when my brother asked me. My oldest brother came to me and he asked for a Bible. He said, what Bible are you? I see you're reading your Bible. What version are you reading? I told him that I was reading the New Living Translations. It was just one that just kind of gives you modern day language. And so I was able to break down and really, get you to understand the Word of God in a more simpler term. And so when he asked for the Bible, I was able to get him one. And then he came back a few weeks later. He said, I see you going to church on the regular, and let me go one day with you to church. And so he attended church with me one day. And then he noticed that I was going in earlier than the service. I was going like an hour earlier. He said, well, why are you going an hour early? And I told him I was a greeter at church, and I was there to serve and open the door and greet people as they come into the sanctuary. He said, well, I want to come to you and I want to be a server at church. So not only was he able to see me read the Bible, was he able to see me be a participant in church, to serve in church, and to be able to get, now my whole family goes to church. My parents go to church, my two oldest brothers, and growing up, you would not have found the Dansler household in the church. And to see the impact that I've been able to have on my family spiritually is one of the greatest blessings that I've been able to do. And I'm just happy that I've been able to be a solid and good ambassador for the kingdom of God.
You know, we're an anomaly sometimes. Those of us who went to prison went to the most divisive environment you could possibly go to in America, at least. And we have come out with a tighter bond of unity across racial lines, socioeconomic lines, age lines, and we come out with this unity as leaders, and people falling behind. You are a tremendous example of that. And so I just want to say kudos to you. Brandon, any questions that have come in from the chat line?
Yeah, Michelle Gagney would like to know what was your business plan about?
My business plan was to start a security company. It was called Crime Watch Protective Service. So, and my premise behind that was, one, I knew about the security industry, but I also knew the impact crime could have on families and victims and on those incarcerated themselves. And so, being able to provide a safe community is something that I've always, that's been near and passionate to my heart.
Wow, I think you did a great job of that. Anything else?
Edward Meyer, Chief Development Officer, would like to know, from your personal experiences, why does PEP mean so much to you, your family, and your future, and your community?
Kind of going back to what Brian asked, the person I was prior to going to prison, I was one that was devoid of values here. My only values was of selfish ambition. And the main thing that I got from PEP, from the initial package that they send us, it talks about the 10 driving values that we're expected to adhere to while we're going through this program. And it was a life changer. I was, coupled with biblical principles and the 10 driving values, you can't go wrong in life. They help guide you in so many ways on your home front, with your family, how to interact with those in the community, how to interact with your employers and your employees. So it was just the value system that, PEP was able to help instill in me, has helped me throughout my entire life. And I know it's going to, help me function as a person that is committed to being a positive influence in my community. It's going to help me, whatever employer my future employer is going to be. It's going to help me relationship-wise through the authentic manhood values, and they teach you, how to be the spiritual and the leader of your household. And so, this program has been able to instill in me values that I know that I can pass on to my family and future generations.
I was thinking about our time in prison and how that really instills in us and conditions us to see law enforcement as the enemy, the other side, and sometimes that spills over out here, and especially the civil unrest that we've got going on in the country, and how that's ingrained. You're a black man coming out of prison, that's almost two strikes against you. Sometimes, has there been any time when you were pulled over, or you had fear or stress about being pulled over, or any negative engagement with law enforcement since you've been out?
I personally have not had any negative influences with law enforcement. My parents instilled in me, and they had the talk, or the black talk, or however you want to describe it, was how to conduct yourself in the presence of law enforcement, and how to show respect to them, and make sure that you're staying calm so they can be calm, and you're able to get out of that situation that you're in. And one of the things that was really a stark difference inside was the way the PEP guys conducted themselves when the guards came in. You could go into a unit and you could hear, guys that were incarcerated blurt out so many different, vile language and attackative language towards guards. And the PEP, that was not permitted at all. That was not okay. We were expected to conduct ourselves in a different manner, and we were expected to respect authority. And Scripture says that. So it was ingrained in me through my parents and reinforced through PEP. And so when you're interacting with law enforcement, you got to understand that they're there to do a job, and you have to respect them because of the position they hold. and you have to make sure that you stay calm and clear-headed, and you don't escalate already a situation where there's tension there as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an amazing interview with an amazing man, and I think I just want to cap this off by first of all saying thank you for doing this, and thank you for the man that you have become, and I'm so excited to see what you're going to do in the future. But I also want to just say that at a time when there's a big focus on criminal justice reform and socioeconomic justice and opportunities, PEP is really at the confluence of all those things coming together, and we bring about pan-racial unity that makes a huge difference. We are a demonstration, a solution to what's going on in this country, and I think the unity across all lines, age, race, capabilities is amazing, and I think you're a great example of it. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.